Let's get more now on our top story. A week and a half after Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 vanished, the search by land and sea has once again expanded. It includes parts of 11 countries, with Australia leading efforts in the Indian Ocean. 26 nations are now involved because it's believed the plane could have been deliberately steered off course. Investigators remain focused on the pilots. Now, this YouTube video purportedly shows the captain and first officer going through security before the flight. Investigators searched the homes of both men over the weekend. Meanwhile, a report in a Malaysian newspaper says the plane could have literally been flying under the radar at 1,500 meters or less to avoid detection. CNN cannot confirm that report, which cites unnamed sources. Also, Malaysia Airlines has revised its timeline on when the plane's communications were disabled. And it is believed the co-pilot said those final words to air traffic control at 1:19 a.m., saying, quote, "All right, good night." Let's go now to Andrew, who is live in Kuala Lumpur for us. So, Andrew, what could the impact be of this revised timeline?
Well, it could be significant. Good morning, Patricia. It could be very significant because the revision means that these communication systems, which we were led to believe were switched off before the pilot made his all right good night sign-off, were, in fact, may have been still working. That means the pilot, when he said good night, could have been in charge of a plane that was working totally normally, and whatever happened after that, and that raises, of course, the possibility that it was a catastrophic mechanical failure rather than a deliberate human act. Now, at the moment, all of this is conjecture. It's very hard to pin down real facts on this story, as we've just witnessed, because that was coming to us from basically the Malaysian Prime Minister was giving us this timeline, which pointed very clearly towards the fact that the authorities thought that the systems were being shut down before the pilot said good night. Now that seems to be not the case. So it's just another twist in this story where there are still so few facts on the ground, Patricia. Meanwhile, the search goes on both to the north and to the south. I want to bring in CNN's terrorism analyst now, security analyst Peter Bergen, to talk a little bit more about possible scenarios, because we are still very...
I lost your voice, Andrew, but I got most of that. If this is a terrorism event, it's puzzling that there's been no credible claim of responsibility. There have been no demands, as there would typically be in some hijacking. There's been no overt political act, as there was on 9/11 when planes were flown into the Trade Center and the Pentagon. Moreover, the kinds of groups that might have the capability or intention to do this don't really exist. The groups that we know, Uyghur separatists have tried to hijack planes without success inside China. They have done terrorist attacks in China, but not outside China largely. And they've certainly shown no capabilities for a sophisticated hijacking. The Al-Qaeda affiliate in the area of the world where Andrew is reporting from, Jamaat Islamiyah, certainly has operated in Malaysia in the past, but they've been under a great deal of law enforcement pressure, and their once potent capabilities have declined. And overall, it would be puzzling for this group to attack a Malaysian carrier. After all, Malaysia is a majority Muslim country. Typically, these groups have targeted Western embassies or Western hotels. So terrorism seems, at the moment, one of the less likely scenarios.
So, Peter, it's Patricia here. I'm going to pick up as we had some technical difficulties with Andrew in Kuala Lumpur. So, as you say, there's been no demands, there's been no claim of responsibility, so terrorism not likely. So then what are some likely scenarios?
Well, I think there are three other likely scenarios. One is a pilot suicide or attempted pilot suicide, which we saw in Egypt Air 990 leaving JFK Airport in 1999. Within a few minutes of leaving the airport, Egypt Air co-pilot plunged the plane into the sea. The conclusion of the American National Transportation Safety Board was that this was an intentional act. Egyptian authorities disputed that, but the fact is the National Transportation Safety Board is the most well-regarded investigative arm of the aviation business. Another scenario might be piracy for economic reasons, that somebody stole the aircraft for some kind of financial reason. And finally, another option might be somebody taking the aircraft for idiosyncratic motives. And we've seen this in the past. People do very strange things, including trying to take aircraft for idiosyncratic reasons. We saw that, for instance, with the Turkish Airlines flight in 2006. A man got in the cockpit. He was a deserter from the Turkish military. He demanded the plane be taken to Italy. He had some harebrained scheme to meet the Pope. And luckily, the plane, was diverted to Italy, and this guy was arrested. So there are other options other than just a sort of political hijacking of the kind that we normally might consider when we hear the word hijacking.
So, Peter, I'm curious. In each of these other scenarios, pilot suicide, piracy, some kind of other idiosyncratic motive, I mean, what do investigators look for? Because they can't even find the plane right now, and there are no cockpit recorders to go on. So how do you go about trying to see if any of these other scenarios could be the right one?
Well, I mean, it will always. I mean, we may never know, unfortunately, because first of all we have to recover the plane, and then all the sort of technical things that you hope to recover, but we're not at that point. In the case of Egypt Air, where it was a pilot suicide, the National Transportation Safety Board did a 3-year investigation, and the pilot in question was about to be fired by the airline. He had various kinds of personal problems. And he had a pretty strong motive. So, one of the reasons the Malaysians are looking at the pilot and the co-pilot is, did they have any motive? And right now, it doesn't seem that they did. But you're looking for people with personal problems. You're looking for people with very strongly held political beliefs. And then you're also looking for the same things for people on the plane. But, it's going to be very hard to sort out absent recovery of the plane, because in the Egypt Air case, for instance, they were able to recover parts of the plane, and the parts of the plane, it was inconsistent with mechanical failure, which is what the Egyptian authorities claimed, but the American investigation found that was inconsistent with the physical evidence.
So a painstaking process all around as the families continue to wait for answers. Thank you so much, Peter Bergen, live for us from Washington.
Thank you.